the major factors that prevents people from becoming a 5%er is the same as one of the most famous lines in cinematic history. It goes something like this: "You can't handle the truth." Stay tuned. Hello again, everyone. I'm Eli's dad with Project Eli, where we educate, we lead, we inspire. We're in the middle of a series about how successful people think, based upon the book by John C. Maxwell. Huge shout out. We're stealing a lot of his material, passing it along, getting a different perspective, a different angle, a different paradigm, so that it hopefully will click with you and you'll be able to advance. It's critical to recognize the importance of realistic thinking. Last time we talked about it. Today we're going to give you the how-to. We are a blueprint channel. How do you do it? First of all, you have to develop an appreciation for truth. You can't develop as a realistic thinker until you gain an appreciation for the truth, to look at it, to learn it, and to enjoy it. You know, people tend to exaggerate their success and minimize their failures or deficiencies. Well, duh, have you looked at the internet lately? They live according to Ruckett's Law, which is believing, excuse me, there's nothing so small that it can't be blown out of proportion. All right, newscaster Ted Koppel observed, you know, our society finds truth too strong a medicine to digest undiluted. In its purest form, truth is not a polite tap on the shoulder, it's a howling reproach. In other words, the truth is going to set you free, but first, it's going to make you angry. If you want to become a realistic thinker, you need to get comfortable dealing with the truth and face up to it. 5%ers face up to the truth. They are realistic thinkers. And it starts by doing your homework. The process of realistic thinking begins with doing your homework. You first got to get the facts. You know, I can't help but recall a really funny interview that I saw on TV over a year ago, where this gentleman was out there talking about COVID-19 and was being questioned by this political lady, this big shot who thought she knew everything. You know, and one of the questions she asked is, well, you know, you're telling us all this stuff. What did they do? This is COVID-19. What did they do the other 18 times? And the expert looked at her and said, "Madam, the reason it's called COVID-19 is because it's from the year 2019. Boy, you should have seen how embarrassed that woman looked. Chester Bowles said, and I quote, "When you approach a problem, strip yourself of preconceived opinions and prejudice, assemble and learn the facts of the situation, make the decision which seems to you to be the most honest, and then stick to it." 5%ers, once they make a decision, stick with it. The 95%ers are slow to come to decisions and change their minds frequently. Keep this in mind when you're looking for people to follow, when you're looking for leaders. Leaders are decisive in decision making and stick to their decisions. Bad leaders take a long time to come to a decision and are quick to change their minds. It doesn't matter how sound your thinking is if it's based on faulty data or assumptions. You can't think well in the absence of facts or in the presence of poor information. You can also find out what others have done in similar circumstances. Remember, your thinking doesn't necessarily have to be original. It just has to be solid. Why not learn all that you can from good thinkers who have faced similar situations in the past? You're going to find that some of your best thinking has been done by others. Do your homework. Third, think through the pros and the cons. You know, there's nothing like taking the time to really examine the pros and cons of an issue to give you a strong dose of reality. It rarely comes down to simply choosing the course of action with the greatest number of pros, because all pros and cons don't carry the same weight. But that's not the value of the exercise anyway. Rather, it helps you to dig into the facts, examine an issue from different angles, and really count the cost of a possible course of action. You know, I used to use this particular strategy a lot in the sales game. One of the first closes that you will learn as a salesperson is the Ben Franklin close. It goes something like this. You know, Mr. and Mrs. Client, one of the best thinkers of all times was a gentleman named Ben Franklin, a great American. Would you agree? Great. You know, when old Ben would have a problem, what he would do is he would sit down, he'd grab a piece of paper, put a line down the middle, and write yes on one side and no on the other side. Now you're doing this with your clients who said, well, I really want to think about it. Okay, and as a salesperson, you know that when they say, I want to think about it, if you don't get them to sign on the dotted line right there, right now, when you're with them, they're not going to think about reasons why they should do something. They're going to think about reasons why they shouldn't. You never walk out of the house with, I think about it, because they never call you back and say, okay, I've decided to do it. Anyway, you take the piece of paper, you put the line down the middle for them and say, let's use Ben's idea, and you write yes on one side and no on the other. You say all the reasons that we want to go ahead and make this purchase or buy this service or whatever. Is it'll accomplish this, it'll accomplish that, it's affordable, you can do this, you can do that, and you put all the reasons for yes, and you help them out writing those. And then you get to the side where it says, okay, let's think of all the reasons why you shouldn't do it. And then you as a salesperson, shut up. Let them think of their own reasons why they shouldn't do it. And it'll do one of two things. Either they'll say, well, can't think of any reason why we shouldn't do it, or they'll come up with the objection, and you as a salesperson will be able to hopefully overcome that objection. That's the Ben Franklin close. You put the yes on one side, you put the no. So you go over the pros and the cons, and you figure out, and that will help you make a good decision. And just by the way, in the sales game, when they wouldn't think of anything to say no, you would say, well, good old Ben Franklin, I guess our answer is pretty obvious here. What's your middle name, Mr. Klein? And then you start filling out the application. Fourth thing we want to talk about is picture the worst case scenario. The essence of realistic thinking is discovering, picturing, and examining the worst case scenario. You got to ask yourself questions like, what if sales fall short of projections? What if revenue hits rock bottom? And I'm not talking the optimist rock bottom, I'm talking about real rock bottom. What if we don't win the account? What if the client doesn't pay us? What if we have to do the job short-handed? What if our best player gets sick? What if all the colleges reject my application? What if the market goes belly up? What if volunteers quit? What if nobody shows up? There's a lot of questions you can ask. You get the idea. The point is that you need to think about worst case possibilities, whether you're running a business, leading a department, coaching a team, or planning your personal finances. Your goal isn't to be negative or to expect the worst, but just to be ready for that in the event that it happens. That way, you give yourself the best chance for a positive result, no matter what. If you picture the worst case and examine it honestly, then you really have experienced the reality check. You're ready for anything. And as you do that, take the advice of Charles Hole, who advised, and I quote, deliberate with caution, but act with decision. Be decisive. And yield with graciousness or oppose with firmness. Unquote. So once that decision has been made, then and you don't agree with it, but you're part of the group, yield with graciousness, or be very vocal in your opposition. Be firm. Fifth thing, align your thinking with your resources. One of the keys to maximizing realistic thinking is aligning your resources with your objectives. Looking at pros and cons and examining worst case scenarios will make you aware of any gaps between what you desire and what really is. Once you know what those gaps are, you can use your resources to fill them up. After all, isn't that what resources are for? Now let me give you something here very, very important. I don't want you to take this as a reason to say, well, I don't have the resources, I can't do that. The people that are successful recognize when they need a particular resource, they say, instead of saying, well, we don't have that resource, they say, how can I acquire that resource? How can I? Does that make sense? So once again, use your resources to help you out, but don't say to yourself, and this is a mistake that the 95% crowd makes, you know, oh, we don't have the resources. You want to be, the key is resourcefulness, not resources, because there are a lot of people that have a great number of resources that don't do jack. But there are a lot of people that don't have resources that are able to accomplish a lot. Why? Because their thinking is, how can I get the necessary resources? Does that make sense? Okay, we've gone over another style of thinking, just the same way as you have to manage casual dress and formal dress, you know, and as a fashion plate, like me. But the point is, you have to master different ways of thinking. And let's always remember the key thing. Let's not ration the passion, let's fashion the passion. I'm Eli's dad.